All right. Good, mostly afternoon, I guess it is 11:30, but for some of you, I imagine it's already after the afternoon. Welcome to a freestyle real-time dev live stream. My name's Kevin. We're doing these twice a week. This is our first session at our new time. So we're doing these Sunday and Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is set up as a Q&A. Come in, ask questions of basically anything to do with game development, virtual production, blueprints, tools, processes, plugins, anything as it applies to game development, like I said, virtual production, augmented reality, virtual reality, all the cool stuff. That's kind of what we're talking about. Questions take priority. Generally speaking, if there are no questions, I will fill the time while I wait for people to come in and stuff like that. But we've already got a full list of questions to go through today, so that's not going to be a problem. As far as dev updates on my own project, there have been no updates since the last time, so we can skip right over that and get straight into the questions. We are trying something a little bit different with our audio today. So if you notice any audio issues, feel free to let me know. Now, why am I doing this? Or why are you listening to me? I'm doing this because I love learning. I love helping people break through learning curves. And I have a lot of fun with just creative problem solving in general. And I'm also already losing my voice and we're in the first 2 seconds. So anyways, that's why we do this. And hopefully we can help you wreck the learning curve in your own projects and studies and everything that you're doing. I currently work as a senior principal tech artist in R&D at Riot Games. I get to do a lot of really cool stuff at work. There's a lot of cool stuff I don't get to do at work, so this is also a great chance for me to learn a ton about other disciplines and the kinds of things that you all are working on. And I promise you, I have learned a ton about Unreal and parts of Unreal I didn't even know existed as a result of doing this. So it's fun for me too. So with that, as I said, we've got a couple of different questions already going. Welcome, Joe. Welcome, Lucian. And Paulo Madeira, 3D. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the community. I'm pretty sure I've got Paulo and Lucian's questions teed up. Joe, I'm not sure which course you're talking about, but you're welcome. That's cool. We are going to be hopping straight into some of the questions. Feel free to throw more questions in the chat. Let's go over a couple of things. First off, also, sorry to Twitch. I forgot to update the schedule on Twitch, so you all don't even know that this is happening right now. I will get that updated for you all next time. I promise. So with that, let's just kind of get our screen up and ready for some fun stuff. So with our questions today, let's start with a little bit of... We got a question on LinkedIn actually, and basically it's all about editor blueprint utility. So this is Sergio was asking, they want to be able to select a static mesh. Let me see if I can read this. Select a static mesh and execute scripted actor actions on it. And the purpose would be to make mesh invisible, all kinds of different things. But the overall overriding point, we've been kind of going back and forth, is to get that working. And my guess is that is potentially Paulo Madeira 3D as well. So let's do that. Let's make a blueprint utility widget to kind of see if we can't help out with some of that. So first things first, we need to create we're going to go to our editor utilities. All right, where am I starting? This is generic Unreal. This is the third person setup with a bunch of tutorial stuff we've been doing. There is nothing special about this particular Unreal. This is Unreal Engine 5.1, just so you're aware. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an editor utility widget. And the type of widget that I want to create is an actor action utility. So let's select this and let's blueprint utility. And we're going to call this actor action test, for example. Okay, so we have our actor action test. Everybody with me? Everybody can see the screen okay? Now, what we want to do with this actor action test is I want to be able to take this box and I want to be able to, as Sergio said, duplicate it, change some shadow attributes on it and move on from there. And hopefully that will help with some understanding there. So let's see here. Make sure we are actually streaming. We are. Okay, cool. All right, so first things first, when we take a look at our functions, one of the first things is over here on the left. I like to look at what functions are available for me to override to start from. And so I like the idea of run. So I'm just going to use run. And the very first thing I'm going to do, just like I do with anything I've never done before, is I'm just going to print a string. Because I want to make sure this is even working. So this is going to print hello. Let's bring our chat back so we can see what's going on. And when we go into our, oh, we do need to compile that. Let's compile and sure, let's save that. All right, now if I right click on this Blueprint utility actor action test and I choose run editor utility blueprint, what is going to happen is nothing. Well, if you recall, if you have watched the Blueprint widgets video that I did, there's a difference between runtime and when you're an editor. So if you actually go to your output log, you'll notice here at the very bottom of the output log, I actually do have a print and it says hello. So step one, I know our script is running. That is a good thing. Okay, so now that we've got it running, let's do some stuff. Back in here, what we're going to do is let's just get assets. Get of class, or no, get, let's see, can we get selected? Yeah, let's get selected assets. Now, you might be thinking this is wrong if you've done this before. That's okay. We sometimes intentionally make mistakes to demonstrate stuff. Now, I'm going to get the selected assets, and then the next step of the learning is let's just, for each of the ones that I have selected, we're going to use a for loop. Is everybody familiar with for loops, I hope? And all we're going to do is print the name of the selected asset. I just want to do baby steps here. Make sure we're using building blocks here. So let's get the display name. And what we're going to do is we're just going to print the string. Okay. So when we print this string, now let's compile this. Now when we come back here and we run our utility editor widget, we go back to our output log and we look, you'll notice that it prints BPU actor action test. Now hold on a second. That is not the static mesh actor I have selected and seen. So this is one of the important things of understanding when you're working with these utility widgets is the idea of assets versus actors, whether you're in Pi or like runtime or whether you're working within the content browser. This list of assets gets the actual assets in the content browser. This is not what I want for the utility that I want to make right now. So what I want to do is I want to get selected actors here. And we're just going to steal the outputs here and reconnect this and rerun it. So now we're getting selected actors and we're going to go through and we're going to print these out. So let's go back here, run our widget again, come back and check our print. Now pretty soon we're not gonna have to do this print anymore. Now look at this. This is cool. This is our static mesh chamfer cube 2. That is actually the actor we have selected. So another win on the steps towards success for this. Now, at this point, we have our actor. We just got to do what we want to do with it. So how do we duplicate a static mesh? Well, what we can do is we can just spawn a new one and set the static mesh component to the same one that is currently selected. So let's do that. So for each of these, we don't need the display names anymore or anything like that. Let's do a couple things. First, let's see here. Let's do this. Let's spawn. Let's cast this to a static mesh actor because we need to make sure that it is actually a static mesh actor for this to work. So we're going to use this cast to just ensure that it is what we think it is. So Paulo Madeira, normally I right click on the mesh and choose to run the script. That's cool too. That works as well. Either way. However we run it, it will be fine. Okay, so then as a static mesh actor, let's get the static mesh, let's get the static component. Here's our static mesh component. So for the selected actor, we're making sure it's a static mesh actor, and then we're getting the static mesh component. Then what we're going to do is we're going to spawn an actor from class. And the class that we're going to use is a static mesh actor. Okay, and we're not going to worry about all of this, but if we do this, all it's going to do is spawn something empty. So what we're going to do with our actor from class is we're going to set the static mesh. I believe this is what we want. And the new mesh should be, okay, so we got a little bit of a disconnect. Oh, that's the component, hold on. Set the static mesh. Okay, let's do this. Let's get the static mesh component. And then with it, let's set the static mesh. Okay. Whew. Bunch of casting to get us to where we need to be. Okay, and now we're going to set it to, nope, hold on a second. Oh, we need to get the static mesh from this. Now we can connect everything. So real quick, just because this has come up before, how do you know levels of casting and where you need to go? A lot of times if you just hold your mouse over here, it'll say it needs a static mesh object reference. So for example, I know Boss Sparrow asked this in our last one. This is a static mesh object reference. What I was originally trying to connect was a static mesh component object reference. I know that's not going to work because it won't let me connect it. So it just tells me mentally I need to do a little bit more digging to find what I'm looking for in order to be able to connect it all up. All right, so what's going to happen? This is going to basically spawn a static mesh, but where's it going to be? It's going to be at 0, 0, 0. That's not super helpful. So let's just specify something here that will be a little more helpful just so we can see this happening. If I can pick, can't pick these things. All right, so let's get the actor location. Get the location. Oh, not from there. Wrong one. It doesn't know it's an actor yet. Let's get the actor location. And then just so I can see it to start with, I'm going to offset it a little bit. So I'm just going to do a quick add here, and I'm going to add 100 units in X and 100 units in Y. This is not necessary. This is simply just to get it to offset so I can see that it's actually doing what I want. And as always, let's work clean if we can here. I'm going to disconnect a couple of these things and clean up these noodles. Okay, so recap what we're doing. We are getting our selected actors. For each one, we're going to cast it to a static mesh actor. That's to make sure it's actually a static mesh. If it is, and we know it is because that will be true, then what we're going to do is we're going to get that actor's location and we're going to offset it, and we're going to spawn a new actor as a static mesh actor, and we are going to set its static mesh to be the same static mesh of the selected one. So I think that's a pretty big chunk, bite-sized chunk. So let's compile that and let's see if this works. So I'm going to right click on my utility and I'm going to choose run. Okay. This is the cool part. This is this is the cool part when you click a button and things actually work. So we now have a duplicate of our static mesh. So let's take this a step further. I'm just going to delete this for right now. And there's so many things we can do at this point, but basically what we could do, for example, is I think in the example Sergio was talking about setting the shadows. So let's do this. So shadow, set cast shadows on the static mesh component. We're going to, oh man, there's lots of things we can do, but let's just do this. We're going to take this static mesh component. We don't need it twice. We can just do it once. And then we're going to, once we set this, we're going to set the shadows to be no shadows, for example. Okay. I think this will do the old one first. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. So you can see here it has a shadow. All right. Now when we compile our blueprint and we run it again, let's see if we have shadows. No shadows. You see that? So we have successfully created a blueprint utility widget that is getting our list of our selected objects, and for each one that we pick, it will create a duplicate of it, offset it, and turn off shadows. So if we pick 2 of these, let's see if our stuff works. Right click, run. We have 2 static meshes now that are basically duplicates of the ones that were there, and they happen to have their shadows turned off. So the number of things that you can do with this at this point, once you figure out how to create this, storing the values, naming them properly, all kinds of stuff, it's pretty powerful. So you can very quickly use these editor utility widgets, for example, to name all of your level actors to something special or whatever it is you want to do. So hopefully that is helpful. And I wish my Portuguese wasn't so rusty, otherwise we could have tried that whole thing in Portuguese. That would have been fun. Okay, cool. So it looks like that helped with that one. Now, let's see here. Also, just so you know, Paulo, if you look at the editor utility video that I sent you, that's also like a more, it's a full hour-long tutorial on how to use editor utility widgets with UIs and everything like that. Same type of thing. It uses the gameplay subsystems though, or not gameplay. It uses the editor subsystems. Reason being, that happened to be how I was doing it at the time, and that might also be useful for you. Okay, cool. So 1 question down. Good to go. Let's take a look at some things that were coming in. I know Lucian was asking. I feel like Lucian, I feel like you had some questions. Where were you asking your questions? Were they in Discord? I swear. While I sort out where that next question is, let's take a look at another question. So this one was by Corvus on our Discord server. We've been going back and forth on this one. So basically, they're trying to create a pickup that applies a gameplay effect that changes one of the attributes on the character when it's acquired via the gameplay ability system, and they're trying to figure out how to access the attribute and communicate the float value to the player state where they have the component, and implement it as an interface, communicating the information between the pickup blueprint and the character blueprint at the moment. And the code, my code looks like this. So is there a better way to do this? Please let me know. I'm also trying to make it so this pickup will spawn upon enemy death and then have its static size and energy value be determined by the class tag of the enemy that spawned it. All right. Okay, that's what I thought, Lucian. I was like, I swear that's Corvus. Okay, so where we left off in our conversation in Discord, I had a couple thoughts for you. So let's go back. First off, this is the current prototype I'm working on, and when characters die, what happens is all of their items get dropped. It's a similar type of thing. Now, as I was looking at this as an example, what happens is, let's see here, let me go back here to the event graph and show you. So there's an event on death. When death happens, we call our parent function, and then we call this drop items. Now, what does drop items do? Drop items goes through, and I'm just going to walk you through this so you can see the kinds of things that this does. Basically, it goes through, it gets the quick bar and it gets the inventory manager, and from that it gets all the items. And for every single one, if it's valid, it gets the item definition. It gets, and what it does is it drops all of your equipment in a random position around where the player died, effectively. Okay? And the thing that's important to note about this, based on some of your questions, is what we do is we go through, we get all the information from each of the items, and then we spawn our test pickup item. And with that, we have on the test pickup actor exposed on spawn, we have the stat tags, cooldown time, instigator. We have all kinds of information that we can use. Those stat tags determine, let's say you had a gun, it holds 8 rounds, you'd shot 5 of them, there's only 3 rounds left. If you drop the gun without setting 3 rounds, then somebody's going to be able to pick up a full load of ammo because they picked up that gun. So we need to be able to set that there's only 3 rounds left in that gun, and that's what this does. So whether it's how many bullets are left, the size of the character, or the size of the energy orb that you want to spawn, or the class of the character, there's a bunch of different ways you can communicate this stuff. So then once we spawn that pickup, we set all of our collision stuff, we set all of the mesh and everything like that. But the actual test pickup, in our construction script, we get all of our stat tags and we do all of this information. Now, you're like, I know this. This is what I'm trying to do. So here's the trick. Right now, it sounds like when you spawn your item, your pickup item, whether you're using your blueprint interface or however you're doing it, when it goes to spawn, it goes to ask the actor that died, in this case, what class they were or how big energy you want to spawn. And they're invalid because you've already destroyed it. So a quick way to test, to confirm that that is the problem, is to put a delay in. So when your character dies, put a delay in after you do the spawn, long enough that you can get through a couple ticks, and that pickup item will go back to talk to the actor and the actor will still be there. If that works, then it is 100% a timing, an order of operations thing, a timing thing. Your actor's being destroyed before it has a chance to communicate with either your blueprint interface or whatever it is. Now, I have a couple ideas for ways that you can work around that. So let's talk about those real quick. And this is going to largely depend on how your game is built and how it's set up. So right now, you're relying, let's say you created a blueprint interface, right? You're relying on the actor that's spawned to be able to talk to the actor that's dying. But the actor who spawned has not finished spawning yet, and the actor dies first. Well, I've seen it built where you can either use a drop manager, like a drop actor or something like that, a encounter manager, or your level blueprint. So for example, you said you created an interface. Well, if your interface is called drop items, what you can do is on death of any actor in your game, you could get the level blueprint, test to see if it implements the drop items interface, and if it does, call that. And then what will happen is the level blueprint already exists, or if you have a drop manager in your level, it will already exist. So you're not waiting to spawn an actor that doesn't exist yet. Do you see what I'm saying? So effectively, you have this kind of oversight, whether it be the level blueprint and a blueprint that always spawns in your levels that handles drop tables, etc. It's always there, and any actor that dies in the level can check to see if your level blueprint is implementing drops and do it that way. You could also possibly put it in the game mode. There's all kinds of things you can do it. Here's the cool thing about implementing it as an interface as you've done. If you realize that's not the best place for it, it's super easy for you to move it later. But the bottom line is try to put a delay in, see if that does in fact fix your problem. And if it does, it's just a timing and order of operations. Now I'll say one more thing about this. When a character dies versus when they're destroyed, it's a pretty big decision, pretty big discussion sometimes, because what happens if Jesper, welcome to the chat, or welcome to the stream actually. So here's why this is a big deal. For example, I was working on a prototype game a few number of years ago, and the game designers came around and they said, hey, let's do this. When we kill actors, we want to create this mode where when we kill all of the enemies, when you kill an enemy, they don't just die. Okay, it was like the zombie mode. They come back alive as a skeletal version of themselves. So there's a couple different ways to handle that. One way to handle that is, rather than killing your actors fast, like right away instantaneously, is they're just kind of, their pawns aren't moving, they're dead, but they're not destroyed yet. And then if they have this curse on them that brings them back to life in so many amounts of seconds, all of a sudden they would respawn as skeletons. Well, if you do that where it's the same actor, then all of the stats stay the same. It's the same actor already. If you destroy that actor and you build a completely new actor, then what ends up happening is you have to make sure you copy everything over to the new actor. So there's different things or decisions that can be made. It's not an easy slam dunk thing as far as when and how you decide to destroy actors. I've seen teams spin on it. I don't think there is necessarily a wrong or right answer. I think it just sort of depends on your game. So just a couple things to think about depending on how quickly you're destroying your actors, that may actually affect some of these things as well. Does that help at all, Corvus? Yeah, hopefully the new time helps people out a little bit better. So, okay. The other thing, there was a sub question within Lucian. By the way, Lucian is Corvus, by the way. So I'm talking to the same person. So the other sub question that Lucian had as part of the gas system. Gas, for anybody who doesn't know, is the gameplay ability system. That's a lot to take in. Okay, let's start with the baby step then. I want you to put a delay before you destroy your actor. Okay, I want you to see if you do that. Put like a 1 second delay. All right, if you do that, do your drop items spawn correctly? If they do, then let's take the next step. Okay, and we can talk about what that next step is depending on what you're trying to achieve. So the other sub question that Lucian had was applying gameplay effects to characters. And I had mentioned that we would take a look at a couple different things as far as gameplay effects goes. So let's take a look at this. Right now, and I don't have one in here, let's put a... see if I can get a damage pad in here. Damage pad. Not damage. Damage pad. Damage. Oh. It's not even a damage. BP gameplay effect pad. Okay, so here we go. This is a great example. So this blueprint, you'll notice, is called a blueprint gameplay effect pad. Now, this is meant, and it has been set up to be reused to do lots of different things. The gameplay effect that this pad might do when you walk over it is it might apply damage, it might give you health. It could do all kinds of stuff. In this particular case, what happens is on the overlap, this is one way. Basically, the character that gets the overlap event through the ability system component directly applies the gameplay effect to themselves. Now, this is where I'm glad you figured it out. That's cool. But this is the piece that I wanted to get to. So, and when they leave the pad, they remove the gameplay effect from themselves. This is just the piece that I want to get to was this is just one way. I have seen multiple different ways for gameplay effects to be applied. Apply gameplay effect to self, apply gameplay effect to target, apply gameplay effect to people in the radius. And what I've noticed is it seems like you have the power to even create your own. You even have the power to create your own. You need a little bit of C++ to do this, but to create your own ways of applying gameplay effects. So for example, maybe the gameplay effect doesn't take the right parameters that you want to send it some more. You can do that through code. So this is the usual straightforward way. I've seen a whole lot more. I've seen a lot of different methods of doing this with the gameplay ability system, and it sort of seems to be based on who wrote the code. So just because it's done one way, for example, the way the Lyra stuff is set up is different than the other one. The other resource that I would throw out there for you, let me see if I can find it real quick. Gameplay ability system. Yeah, so this, when I was first getting started with the gameplay ability system, was an awesome doc, and it's a massive amount to take in, but it was a cool document to reference and see and get somebody's kind of insights on. I think the other thing is the gameplay ability system is a beast, and they built it to be the consensus, or the different feedback I've gotten about the gameplay ability system is they built it for Fortnite effectively and to be able to handle even more than that. So it does a lot. Depending on your game, you may not need all of that. So don't be surprised. I am overwhelmed when I look at the gameplay ability system. So if you're overwhelmed, you're not alone at all. So anyways, hopefully that helps with a couple of your questions. If you have any more, or you need clarification on any point, just throw that in here. Okay, so taking a look through our other questions. Looks like we've covered that one. Okay, I have one more pre-question that was set up. It's a little bit more philosophical about game development. So I was kind of saving that one for the end. So before we get into that, did anybody here have any questions for us as we're rolling today? Anything you're troubleshooting? What's everybody working on? You're all making your own games. What are you all doing? Figure out that delay too. All right. I've actually been thinking about some upcoming courses for you all. And what I was thinking about was maybe it would be fun to make some very quick start to finish games together. For example, let's build a platformer together. Why in the heck would I do something like that? Well, because I think that there are small versions of games, very bite-sized things that we could make in a reasonable amount of time that we could, share with our friends and use as a cool learning opportunity. How did I arrive at this conclusion that reasonable and possible? Few years back, I participated in a bunch of Thunderdomes at work. Basically, it's a game jam. It's a giant game jam. You have basically 48 hours to make a game. you get a team together, and in this particular case, we were making games. But you get a team together and you create a game in 48 hours. And so I did some simple math on it. And the way that it worked out was let's say we had 30 people on a game and they were working for 48 hours, but let's just say some of them actually slacked off and slept. I did not sleep for 40 hours straight, but let's just say some of them slept. So let's just say that we were actually working for, let's say 18 hours times 40 people. 18 hours times 40 people times 2 is 1,440 hours, okay? Divided by 24, 60 days. So that's 60 full days. Divide that by, so we would need to multiply that by 2 if we cut it in half. So in less than 6 months, we could potentially, as single devs, do everything. This is my rationale. This is my brilliant idea. Okay, but take that with a grain of salt. You got to remember these 40 people you're working with are like top of their fields, and so they do everything much faster. But I thought it would be cool to maybe potentially do a series after we finish some of our current training series, like making a platformer start to finish, and then see what we can do to release that. That might be fun. Okay, so Lucian is asking, how is that array different from granted abilities? Which array are you talking about specifically, Lucian? How is that array different than granted abilities? Apply gameplay. Oh. Oh, scroll up. I asked that after an initial question. Okay, hold on. Let me see. I actually figured out. How is that array different? Maybe you mean in Discord? Scroll up? I guess I'm not seeing where I asked that after an initial question. Okay, hold on. This has got to be in Discord. What about size of static mesh? The enemy spawns a drop after death. I think I'm going to need a little bit. Can you either copy the original question? Ah, okay. So what are ability sets and how are they different from granted abilities? Okay. Basically, an ability set is just a collection of abilities that you can give your characters. And for example, you might have an ability set for all melee characters, or you might have an ability set for all ranged characters. Rather than probably the more likely case that you've seen is there is a default ability set depending on the game mode that you're playing. So for example, if you are doing, deathmatch, the ability set might be, the rules for that might be a little bit different, and maybe you don't get jump or whatever it is. So if you had a game that had different modes and you wanted those modes to have different ability sets, as an example, each time you start the mode, rather than trying to track all that stuff and do it, once for each single character, or have different characters for different modes, you have one character, and then when the mode starts, they get the ability set that is assigned to that mode. So the whole point of the way these things are implemented, the modularity of ability sets, the modularity of blueprint interfaces. All of this is so you can decouple your characters, your visuals, your data, and everything, so that you can quickly reuse, change, and repurpose stuff. So in the case of an ability set, you might have an ability set for, like I said, when you initially start or not. That is in addition to the ability to grant abilities. So an ability set will go through each of the abilities in the list and grant that ability to the character that the ability set is on. It would be almost the exact same thing as you making a list of abilities, and then on your game mode start assigning granting each of those abilities to that character. But rather than having to do that per game mode, there's just a set that gets assigned. And you can see that a lot in the Lyra games. So for example, ability set. So just by typing in ability set, for the Lyra example, you can see that there is an ability set for elimination. If we open this up, it's got, there's a leaderboard. They have a gameplay ability to be able to show the leaderboard. So when you are playing elimination, you want to see what the score is. You press maybe tab or whatever it is. This is an ability you get as part of the elimination game. Ability set for control point. Let's see what they got in there. They also have show leaderboard. Let's see, ability set shooter rifle. This one might be more interesting. So we have auto fire, we have reload, and auto reload. So when you pick up this set, you get all of these things. All right, and an ability set could also have not only the abilities, but gameplay effects and attributes, all kinds of different stuff. And then you use these based on what it is you're doing. But in the end of the day, what happens is each of these individual abilities gets granted to your characters. And again, a lot of this is because we've learned a lot about decoupling our assets, so that if you want to reuse your team deathmatch mode on a different level or in a different game or whatever, it's very easy for you to take and plug that and play into a different thing. Almost, yes. I mean, depending on what the goal is of your game. I think it sort of depends on the type of game that you're making as to whether or not you would potentially want to do that. But for example, even jump is an ability, right? And at least in a lot of games I've seen, because by default you can just move around and stuff, and then if the character, like if you want the ability for the character to jump, you would grant them the ability jump, and that would give them the ability to jump. And then the cool thing about that is you can also do things like, how high can you jump? Well, maybe it depends on any number of things, what level character you are. You could increase your jump height based on your level, or you could do, I mean, you can grant the ability to fly, you can grant, like, yeah, I mean, a lot can be abilities. I think there's certain things like running, it's probably not an ability. Sprinting, maybe. Sprinting might be an ability, but yes, you can theoretically have a lot of stuff that's in abilities. If we just look just for fun, gameplay ability. So generally speaking, all of the gameplay abilities, especially in the stuff that you get from Epic, they generally start with the GA underbar. So if you just look at this list of gameplay abilities, they're all, I mean, it's all stuff you probably didn't even realize. So for example, gameplay ability ADS. ADS stands for aim down sights. So when a character is in game, when you right click and they aim down the sights, that's actually an ability. That's not like, it's not in, you know, it's just something that's granted depending on which weapon you have. This gameplay ability aim down sights is not granted if you're using a melee weapon in my version of this game, because you don't need to aim down the sights. Arena hero death is an ability. Dropping a bomb is an ability. Dropping a weapon. Here's the emote. The emote is an ability. And if we look at it, if we look at this emote, all that happens is when the ability gets activated, if we're crouched, we're going to uncrouch, we're going to commit the ability, and then we're going to play the montage to play, which in this case is the emote finger guns, which is the one where he dances around like this. Now, why is this cool? Well, because you could even set it up so that you could have all kinds of emotes that are available to you, and depending on which one you have equipped, that's the one that plays when you play emote, as an example. So everything you're seeing now, and a lot of the things that is hard to wrap our heads around a little bit, is because there's a pretty big effort, and this isn't just in game dev, but in general, there's a lot of good arguments for decoupling a lot of your gameplay, a lot of your actor stuff from the data that drives it all, so that you can quickly adapt it, change it, and reuse it, and repurpose it. And also it makes it a whole lot easier to scale, and if you make mistakes, to potentially fix. And you've seen me, even in our own stuff, for example, when I originally created the melee weapons, I realized, oh, I'm gonna have to make a blueprint for every single melee weapon. This is kind of crazy. I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna create a base class for melee weapons, and everything's gonna inherit from that. In a lesser degree, that's even those kinds of things are done for those reasons. So hopefully that's helpful. Jesper, did you have any questions today? Let's kill that damage pad, we don't need it. I think it also, okay, so Lucian's saying, I saw somewhere that movement related logic should be implemented separately outside gas. Do you think that should be done that way? I think, again, the answer is it depends. So for example, jump is something that I've often seen done with gas. Teleport is another good one that I've seen done with gas. So there's different types of movement logic, and it really depends on what kind of movement logic you're talking about. So if you had a character that was able to blink and teleport, that's probably not your standard. You might implement that as an ability within the gas system. If you were talking about, you know, the aesthetics of a run, how they handle collisions and things like that, maybe. But for example, the enemies, let's see if we can do we have any enemies in here right now? I'll give you an example. Let's do 2 enemies. And then I want to change this to a gun because I want to be able to headshot them. So let's take the pistol and let's bring back our mouse. All right, so if we play this game right now, I don't know what that's all about. Let's go pick up this gun. All right, so when they run, let's see if I can get him to do it. See how he jumps when he hits that wall? That jump is actually a combination. Okay, a couple things. First off, you also notice he dropped his gun. I have 12 bullets with 0 backup. Now I got 1. So he'd fire all of his bullets but 1. Now the way that jump is implemented is, what happens is as the enemies get towards this wall, there's a detection thing. And when they hit it, when they hit the detection, what it does is it triggers the gameplay ability for jump. So they end up jumping the wall. Now, it's not super well implemented, or it's not super robust yet, because, whoa, how do you do that? Because, why? Because I just haven't got it. Oh, dude just picked up a gun. Anyways, so that is actually implemented with a combination of 2 different things. And if we look at our, where is it? It should be in our shooter mannequin. If we take a look at our event graph, I think I've got, Yeah, okay, so there's some logic in here that you can even see I have it commented as jump detection. So what's happening is as those characters are running around, it's basically doing a quick little trace in front of itself. And if the trace hits a wall, then basically what happens is if they are, depending on where they are relative to their move goal and whether or not they are a character, they will try to jump. And the reason this is set up is because we want AI to do the jump, but not players. So if I was a player and the system kept jumping every time I got close to a wall, that would be super annoying. So that's just an example of it's kind of a combination of both. So it really depends on what it is. You could argue that evade is movement. All of these evades that I am doing here, where I'm dashing left and right, forward, and so on, these are all implemented as abilities. So what happens is when I trigger the ability, the evade triggers the ability, and it goes on. So I think it depends on your game. It also depends if you're using gas or not. I'm just expanding out these questions lists. Okay, so we got one more philosophical question. This is more of a kind of a game dev philosophical question that comes from Boss Sparrow, which I think is kind of cool. And I'm not necessarily any Socrates or anything like that, but I think it's worth talking about. So here's a question. It's not a traditional code question or issue, something like that. I'm into game development and all, but I've been demotivated from working on it because one, I don't have a goal to work towards, so it's hard to keep working. And two, I keep kind of getting stuck on basics right now. So I kind of answered this in the Discord if you're in Discord, but one of the things that I think is important about how do you stay motivated? Because making games is not easy, y'all. I mean, when you think about it, Diablo, 8 years. 8 years for them to ship Diablo. Okay? It's not, that is a long time. I worked in, now some games faster, 2 years less. Same thing with movies. A lot of films are more like, some of them 6 months, some of them 2 years. Nothing like 8 years, nothing like a Diablo level time span. So when you're in it, how do you stay motivated and what is it? Now, I actually, or how do you figure out your goals? I would actually say for number one, when you don't have a goal to work towards and it's hard to keep working, I would say take a step back. What is your motivation, first off? There's a lot of different answers for this. You may just like tinkering and building stuff, and this is like your version of Legos. And if that's the case, who cares if you don't have a goal? Just do cool tutorials and have fun with it. Maybe you're trying to get into game development because that's what you want to work in. Perhaps your motivation is you love games so much you want to make games for your friends to play, or there's a game that you've never seen that you want to make yourself. Those are all different reasonable motivations for why you're working in game development or Unreal Engine or Unity, whatever you're working with that may or may not be a motivation for why you play with this stuff. I think if you take a step back, you look at your motivations, then you can sit down and start to set goals based on what it is that's motivating you. So if your goal is to get into game dev because that's what you want to work in, I would set my goals drastically differently than if I wanted to make my own standalone game that I wanted to sell and deliver to players, or if I just wanted my friends to play. Those are all different things. So one, take a step back, take a look at your motivation. And as far as getting stuck with the basics, I kind of went into this a little bit, again in Discord, but for those of you that aren't there, first off, getting stuck with the basics is why we're here. So you need help opening a door, hop in, let's figure out how to open a door. You need help duplicating a static mesh using an asset utility widget. Let's do that together, figure it out, because sometimes there's some weird things. So we can figure that out, okay? But that being said, there's something really cool about being stuck and working on these little problems, because these are smaller problems. And that is, learning is addictive. I kid you not, this applies to everything, whether you're surfing, kite surfing, building Legos. What happens is, when you are working on something and it finally works, your brain actually hits you with a bunch of dopamine and you get excited. And it is exciting. It's a lot of fun. And so as a result of that, you want to keep doing it. So this is why a lot of times we break down goals and objectives into smaller bite-sized pieces, because each of those little wins is even more addicting. And you can see it happening to me here when I'm working with you all. We just made an asset utility widget that duplicated boxes step by step. That was a lot of fun. It was cool when it finally worked. I even cracked a huge smile because it was fun. Now, with that, that's why we break down the bigger tasks into these smaller things. And if you do get stuck, we can break that down even to a smaller task. And that's why sometimes you'll see me, if I don't know where to start, I'm like, print string. Is it even step one? Breaking it down. So there's a lot here as far as like why you're building a game by yourself or you're learning Unreal Engine, etc. And it could be because you're trying to help improve your workflows. It could be because you're trying to learn more for work, or you're trying to get into games or development or virtual production, or whatever it is. Figure that out. Then all the little stuff that's kind of, activating a lever, a code example, whether or not you should even be working on those, you'll start to figure out as we move forward. And I think that's just a really cool place to start. Hopefully, Boss Sparrow, that combined with some of the stuff that I put into Slack is a good starting point. Nobody ever called me Socrates, like I said at the beginning, but I think that's why I break down problems the way I do. And when you work on the same game for 8 years, for example, if you were on the Diablo team, you definitely you're going to cycle through your motivations, because I don't think one is just going to get you all the way through. So hopefully that's helpful there. Survey Alien, welcome to the stream. Thanks for hopping in. We have a couple minutes left. Did anybody have any other questions before we call this a wrap? I'd really be interested if you held like a Discord event where we could all hop into the call with you and ask questions, share work, etc. Would you consider doing something? Absolutely. I've more than considered that. We are going to do that. So one of the things, it's a really cool idea. So one of the things that I'm thinking that we might do is, I have to figure out how we're going to do it. Okay, but I've been thinking about either setting up either a Patreon or just starting to build. We gotta figure out time, because as you can imagine, the amount of time that you can spend on Discord doing these kinds of things, it can be a lot. But that's part of why we set up the Discord servers. We're slowly starting to grow the community. As it grows, as people express interest, just like you have here, what we'll do is we'll try out different things. Basically, I'm going to listen to all of you as far as how we're going to do this. I'm going to listen to all of you. So for example, got some feedback that the times weren't super helpful for people or accessible for people. So we're trying a new time. This, for at least for the next little while, we are going to try this 11:30 time slot on Sundays and Wednesdays and see how that works out. The Discord server was also another community suggestion, and that actually played right into exactly what you're talking about. I think it would be cool for us to basically have game jams, and either you could show us your specific problem, and it could be us, or it could be one-on-one, etc. I'm still trying to play with what that would look like. But yes, not only am I considering it, it is absolutely going to happen, because I think it's fun doing stuff this way, but I think there's also a little bit of like your specific issue. You may even have to send me some files or something that we need to work through. So yes, absolutely. What else do we got here? Okay. So overall, we've hit the end of our live stream hour, but I'm interested in all y'all's feedback. Let me know what you all think about the new time. As always, anybody who's hanging out in the wings, not necessarily chiming in or whatever, if you have comments, suggestions, throw them in the comments. If you like what we're trying to do, y'all, spread the word, let people know. If you think that there are better formats, better ways of doing things, like for example the Discord, etc., Patreon, I'm happy to entertain all that stuff. The goal here is to hopefully help you all wreck the learning curve, and hopefully give you access to a partner in crime with troubleshooting the stuff that you're trying to go through, as some of the things that I didn't have. It would have been nice to be able to talk to a person and ask them questions. So I do not know everything, but if I don't, I do know a lot of really, really smart people, and I'm happy to ask those people to help us out as well. So those are some quick things. Going forward, I've got a couple more videos to wrap out our series, and then I'm going to pitch it back to you all as far as what we do next from a series standpoint. Do we make a quick standalone game together? What is it that you want to do? And we'll kick that all around. Okay? Thank you everybody for hopping in. Appreciate you hopping in the stream. Hopefully this was helpful. As always, feel free to hop on the Discord. Ask questions there. We usually will catalog those questions for our upcoming stream. Our next stream is going to be this Wednesday. It's already on the calendar on YouTube at 11:30. And for all of our Twitch people, I apologize that I did not update the schedule. I will get that updated before our next stream as well. So, Lucian, Servi, Paolo, Joe, thanks for hopping in. It was awesome seeing you all. I hope we get to do a whole lot more of these and have a whole bunch of fun too. Cool. Have a great rest of your Sunday. I will catch you all on the next stream.